Market is stronger Friday morning, seeing a continuation of yesterday's bounce as traders adjust positions ahead of the long weekend. Canola up 14 to over $18. The November contract up 16.60 at $727.60 per ton. Canadian markets will be closed on Monday for Canada Day, while markets in the U.S. will shut down next week Tuesday for the July 4th Independence Day. Shifting weather forecasts ahead of those holidays, we're keeping some caution in the futures markets. The Chicago soy complex is higher early today, and that's providing spillover support for canola. The USDA is set to release updated acreage and quarterly stocks numbers later today, and the potential for large price swings in the Chicago futures, if there are any surprises in the data, kept some caution in the market ahead of those reports. The end of the day trade will likely be highly dependent on what comes out of the USDA. In the U.S., soybean, corn, and wheat futures are all higher, with positioning ahead of those reports a feature. Soybeans underpinned by hot and dry Midwestern weather forecasts, the November contract up 23 cents at $12.89 per bushel. Solid export demand contributed to today's gains, with the USDA reporting private export sales this morning of 132,000 tons of soybeans to China. Average trade estimates ahead of today's reports call for quarterly U.S. soybean stocks of about 800 million bushels, with an acreage base of 87.7 million acres. Corn also caught up in the weather market, moving higher. The September contract up 4 cents at $5.27 per bushel. Quarterly U.S. corn stocks are pegged at around 4.2 billion bushels, with a seeded area of 91.8 million acres. U.S. wheat futures, they are up as well. The biggest gains in Kansas City. Hard red winter wheat, the September contract there up 20 cents at $8.20 per bushel. Spring wheat 12 cents higher in the September contract at $8.37 per bushel, and Chicago soft wheat lagging to the upside, only up 2 cents in September at $6.69 per bushel. Quarterly U.S. wheat stocks are estimated at around 600 million bushels, with seeded area of around 50 million acres. That's a look at the ICE futures and U.S. markets for Friday, June 30th. In Winnipeg, for marketsfarm.com, I'm Phil Franz-Warkentin.
Ready to roll this haymaking season? Butler Farm Equipment in Fort St. John is ready, and they're offering 0% financing or cash back on select New Holland tractors, telehandlers, and hay equipment during the Ready to Roll sales event going on now. Being ready for tomorrow starts today, so hurry in to Butler Farm Equipment in Fort St. John and save. Offers end June 30th.
For commercial use only, customer participation subject to credit qualification and CNH Industrial Capital Canada Ltd approval. Standard terms, conditions, and other restrictions apply. Down payment may be required.
Now, an in-depth look at the news and information shaping our community. This is Moose Talks with your host, Doug Craig, on Moose FM.
Good morning and welcome to the show. My name is Jordan Prentice, and today I'm filling in for Doug Craig. Later on, we'll catch up with local artist and filmmaker Ovvian Castrillo-Hill. She's going to tell us about her latest project after she received a $20,000 Telus STORYHIVE grant. But first, the BC SPCA was forced to vacate their building early last year after it was deemed structurally sound. After nearly a year of looking, they finally found a temporary building this past February, and earlier this week, the BC government announced that they are giving $1 million to the North Peace branch to help renovate a new permanent building. To talk about what that means, we're joined now by Senior Manager for the Interior North region of the BC SPCA, Jamey Blair. Jamey, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Great. So let's start with an update on the North Peace SPCA's current situation. How is the new temporary shelter?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, we were able to secure a lease earlier this year. So right now we've still been undergoing the process of retrofitting that building to be operational for our needs, as it's obviously was used for other purposes before that. So we're in the process of getting that up and going, rehiring staff, so we have adequate staffing on board to help us. And we're also looking to rebuild our volunteer program as well. So we're looking for volunteers to help us in the new center.
Okay, and when the SPCA realized the old building was no longer safe for use, what happened to all the animals?
So we've still been providing services in the community. We haven't left. We've been able to use local partnerships to house animals when needed. We also have a facility in Dawson Creek, just down the road. So using our existing community resources, as well as some of our other centers, we've still been able to maintain some operations over the past year. We're also still providing food bank services to the community. So we've been really lucky to be able to still be a part of Fort St. John over the past year while we've looked for a new home.
And are there lots of animals being housed and fostered outside of the shelter, like large amount?
So we are still seeing a fair number of animals coming into our care. So we are regularly getting animals in through municipal services. So we do offer housing for the city of Fort St. John through the bylaw contract, as well as just animals in the community that need our help. So yes, we are still seeing a fair number come through our doors, and we're happy to still be able to help those in need.
Okay. And how challenging has it been to function during the transition from the old shelter to this temporary one?
Yeah, it's definitely posed some challenges. Obviously, we would love to be fully set up and operational in an animal shelter. So there's obviously logistics to housing animals, being able to still operate services. So there's definitely been a lot of challenges, but the staff and the volunteers in place have done a wonderful job still making sure that we are meeting the needs of the community.
That's great. And let's talk about this $1 million investment from the government. It's part of a larger investment for shelters all over BC. How surprising was the announcement of the funding, or were you expecting the government to step up here?
It was obviously wonderful news. So we don't see regular ongoing government funding for the programs and services that we offer throughout the province. So this announcement that they were investing in our facilities is amazing and very welcomed. We're extremely grateful, and it's going to go to great use with so many of our aging centers across the province. It's wonderful to be able to update them or create new ones so we can continue to advance and provide excellent care in the communities we serve.
Perfect. And how will the money be used in the case of the North Piece?
Yeah, so it'll be part of the finding a permanent home essentially for us in the North Piece location. So right now, like I said, we do have this 2-year lease, which has the option to renew another 3 years after that, but it will be part of determining a permanent home and developing a permanent presence for us in the Fort St. John community.
And would you say it's enough to build a new shelter, or is finding and renovating a new place the only viable option?
We will still need to continue probably to fundraise to meet those additional costs. Obviously, costs for building and construction are going up just across the board. So while it certainly is very helpful and definitely welcome, there will still need to be probably fundraising and other funds raised to be able to have a more permanent option for us, which we're still evaluating what that looks like.
And are you able to kind of provide a timeline on when this next shelter will be in place?
In terms of a permanent home?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right now we don't have a timeline, so it will depend on we're evaluating the previous SPCA location in North Piece and other options that are being considered. So unfortunately, right now I don't have a timeline for what that'll look like.
No problem, Jamey. Just one more question for you here. If someone wants to help the North Piece SPCA somehow, donation, fostering, etc., how can they help out?
Yeah, we're, like I mentioned, we're still really looking to rebuild our volunteers. So we're looking to get more people into the building to help with animal care, different things like that. So we'd love to have people join our team there. We're always looking for donations, so that's welcome at any time. We would love to just hear from the members of the community. However they'd like to help, we'd love to hear from them.
Great. Thank you so much for joining me today, Jamey. And we wish you all the best with finding a new location for the SPCA.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
That's Jamey Blair, the Senior Manager of the BC SPCA's North Interior Region. We'll be right back to talk with local artist and filmmaker Ovvian Castrillo-Hill.
Moose FM is out and about, supporting your favorite local business.
This long weekend, if you're going to be using the time to finish those house projects, you should stop by Windsor Plywood here in FSJ. It's Bernard from the afternoon show. It's their customer appreciation sale. Store-wide, 20% off. Lumber, plywood, power tools, and the list is so long, I'm just going to mention absolutely everything. They have extended their hours till 7 tonight, so you can get a chance to save even if you're stuck at work before the long weekend. Plus, they're going to be having a barbecue at lunch. Come down, grab a bite to eat, and save some money. It's Windsor Plywood on Tolton Road.
Did you know that you can design a piece of jewelry that you've always wanted? Simply bring your old gold and unused gemstones to Carter's Jewelers and tell us to just do it, and we will. You're the boss. Carter's Jewelers, 9908 101st Avenue.
For over 30 years, Tyson with Graphics Man has dedicated himself to assisting people with their design projects. Whether you need a fresh logo or eye-catching posters and business cards, Tyson is committed to bringing your vision to life.
Let's make something special with the Graphics Man. You want something special? Call the Graphics Man.
Give Tyson a call at 250-793-6766.
Hi, I'm Bob Zimmer, your Member of Parliament for Prince George, Peace River, Northern Rockies. I'm honored to work hard for you and be your voice in Ottawa. If you need assistance, please stop by my Fort St. John office at 9916 100th Avenue. We're open Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or call 250-787-1192. We look forward to seeing you.
At energeticcity.ca, we know there are important topics that impact our region that require more time and resources to write about. Our investigative journalist, Spencer Hall, will delve into topics such as healthcare, First Nations relations, and more to keep you informed.
This month, Energetic City Investigates looks into the safety of asbestos concrete pipes delivering the water we drink here in Fort St. John. Health officials say there is no risk to residents, but some scientists, like Dr. Arthur Frank with Drexel University, believe otherwise.
Do you wait 20 or 30 or 40 years when you have all these dead bodies that you could have prevented to finally do something? Or do you look at the growing scientific literature and say these cancers have, even if it's not proven 100%, have a great likelihood to be related to asbestos, and maybe we ought to protect people?
To read our investigative stories, go to energeticcity.ca/investigates. If you want more stories like these that hold those in power accountable, become a supporter of energeticcity.ca. Watch this show live on Facebook or download the podcast at energeticcity.ca.
Welcome back. I am now joined by Ovvian Castrillo-Hill. That's how you pronounce it, right? Good morning. She is a local artist and filmmaker who received a $20,000 Telus STORYHIVE grant. Ovvian, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So tell us a bit about yourself as an artist. Like briefly, you seem to have a lot of artistic interests.
Yes, I guess you can say that I'm just a lover of humanities. I mean, I have a background in design. I also am a sculptor, and I have published a book as well. So, you know, it's funny sometimes because when people ask me, like, what do you do? And I have to think, what am I doing now? You know, because it seems to be like when I have these projects that, you know, I get very involved and very, like, I really delve into them. But yeah, there is a variety of things that I do. Mm-hmm.
Great. So is it XC2? Is that
Yep.
how you say? Okay,
Yep.
so the XC2 exhibition just closed at the Peace Gallery North, and you had your art on display
Yes.
there.
The Exitu art show of the Filipino-Canadian community, that was our 5th year. Like this year was our 5th year. And basically it's an opportunity for people like myself and other Filipino-Canadian newcomers here in town to have a venue for us to show our creativity. And yes, every year I do have a piece among with many other Filipino-Canadian creatives. But I do curate the show, so I'm quite involved in that project as well.
Great. And before we talk about the $20,000 Telus STORYHIVE grant, I'm just curious. It says here that this is your 3rd documentary. Do you want to quickly tell me about your other 2?
Yeah, actually, the Telus STORYHIVE projects, they have numerous kinds of grants. Like the first 2 that I did is under the Voices program. Basically what they do, those are like episodal grants, minimum I think of 6 episodes, maximum of about 10 episodes, and they're really aimed for like emerging filmmakers. So when I first applied for this, I just saw an ad on Facebook, and I applied, and I was fortunate to be among those selected for the first one, and likewise for the second one. But basically my goal was to tell stories about the Filipino-Canadian community, because socially I've heard of so many stories that I thought were worth telling, and specifically like the history of how the community has grown from the 1960s even till today. But this anniversary edition that the recent announcement, this is a different one because it's part of their documentary edition, and it is what they're calling their biggest edition, because they've selected 80 recipients for this grant between BC and Alberta, all with the grant of $20,000 to make a documentary. It's not a series; it's actually just one documentary. But then for me, my expectation, or I'm thinking they're expecting it for me to produce something that is a little bit more honed, in a way that in the first one I was really coming in as an emerging filmmaker, but now that I have a few episodes under my belt, so I think the budget may be bigger, so I think the expectation and quality and it will also be better. So yeah.
Okay, and I'm curious about your process. Like, do you film, edit, do everything by yourself? Like, how do you map out what a day of filming is going to look like for you?
Well, in the beginning, when I first got into the first Voices, largely because the budget was a bit constrained, I did end up having to do things on my own. It was like a one-woman the kind of deal, wherein I wrote the script, and I arranged the interviews. I took the film. I filmed everything and ended up learning how to edit. But I'm really happy that I had to go through that process. So now I have a better understanding of what I can do myself and what I need to delegate. And I think because this is a slightly heftier budget, I might be able to outsource to more seasoned professionals some of the aspects of the new documentary that I will be making. So I'm excited because I think to me this will mean that possibly my work will improve. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cool. And what is your favorite part about making a documentary?
The thing is, because they're documentaries, you can't really anticipate everything. Like, you might have an idea of what the stories are going to be like, or what the theme is of what the people are going to say, but on the day itself, when you're interviewing people, or everything is very spontaneous. So I like that you need to be flexible. I like that things aren't like super stringent. So that's the part that I like, and it's always a big surprise because I think with anything creative that I do, whether it's physical artwork or whether it's designing something, you go in and attack that project with so much enthusiasm. But at the end of the day, various elements come into play. So your final product is always a surprise, even if you plan it, so to speak. Yeah.
And is it like really rewarding to go through that whole process and then sit down and watch the final finished product when you're done?
Yes, I mean it's kind of a double-edged thing too, I guess. I do find fulfillment when I see the end product, and especially if it's addressing the purpose of why I made it in the first place. But then I also can become very critical, because then that's the time that I see that, oh, I should have done it this way, or well, that's a big mistake, or I could have edited that better or whatnot. And but yeah, I mean, for me as a creative, and I've been a creative for a very long time, I am very forgiving of myself, because I understand that it's part of the process, and there's no such thing as perfection when it comes to creating anything related to the art. So yeah, and oftentimes I'm probably the only one noticing those things, because I'm the only one who had a vision in the first place. So, people might be seeing and saying, oh, it's great, because they don't know what the original peg was in my head. So, yeah, so I'm very grateful, and I find fulfillment in being able to share the things that I've created, whether it's something that they can see, or something that they can watch, or something they can read. Yeah.
And I mean, we're always our own toughest critics.
Correct.
As well,
Yes.
right? Okay, so let's talk about the $20,000 Telus STORYHIVE grant. Like I said earlier, this will be your third documentary. What's it all about?
Okay, this is about the bayanihan spirit. I need to go backwards a little bit.
Okay.
That phrase bayanihan is a Filipino phrase, which is actually when the Filipino, it's actually literally lifting somebody's house. So like if somebody had to move in, like say a small town, and they were living in a hut, say, oh, I have to move it literally from this location to the other location. So they schedule a date, and the whole town comes together and literally lifts the house on their shoulders and lifts it to say wherever it needs to be taken. So that's kind of like an analogy and a metaphor for coming together for a project. Now, the bayanihan spirit, that's what we call the spirit that compels you to come together. So I will be showcasing this bayanihan spirit through creating the Filipino float for the Canada Day Parade. Actually, we're preparing for the Northeast Filipino Canadian Association is preparing for the parade for tomorrow. I will be filming a little bit of it, but really the documentary will be about next year's float, because there's a lot of preparation work and training from Telus before we're able to film. But nevertheless, the story is that NP Philcan has been creating Canada Day floats. Oftentimes we get for the first place ribbon, or one, I think most often we get first place, so it's very challenging for us, and also rewarding. However, for me as a Filipino Canadian, it's the coming together to make the float that is more significant than any kind of ribbon the float itself will get, because those are precious moments for me, wherein people from all walks of life, different professions, the Philippines is an archipelago, so we also come from different parts of the country, different languages, different dialects. But when it comes to preparing for the Canada Day Parade, it seems like the galvanizing kind of a project that we have, that people come out and do it. So I want to film all that from beginning to end, from the design process, how people are talking about, say, what theme is going to be pursued that year, the process of carpentry or whatnot, maybe even getting the trailer and getting all dressed up. And oftentimes we have people in Philippine costumes, to celebrate Canada Day. It's basically the whole idea of us joining the parade it's a lot about representation, but it's a lot about being part of Fort St. John, being part of Canada, and showing up. So for me, that whole experience as newcomers to this land, of showing up for Canada is very, very significant, and I want to capture that bayanihan spirit when we do it. Mm-hmm.
And how does it feel to be able to share? I mean, I'm not entirely sure how large the Filipino community is in Fort St. John, but Fort St. John itself is a small city. So how does it feel to be able to share your culture with Fort St. John, and why is that important to you and the Filipino community here?
Well, I think when we're able to share our culture, in a way, it's like a step forward to bridging whatever gaps there are. I think it also helps the newcomers, because there are quite a lot of newcomers coming to Fort St. John as students, as workers, not necessarily residents immediately. But, it makes them feel at home, and it makes them feel less foreign. I think, and also for the locals, I think it becomes like we're reaching out and lending a hand out and trying to connect. And I think so. There's the representation piece and there's the connection piece, but also, like I said earlier, it's an opportunity for us to show up and be part of Team Fort St. John, and I think it's an opportunity more than anything else. Like I mentioned earlier, in the previous ex-situs that I've made, immigration of Filipino Canadians first started in Fort St. John actually in the late 60s. So there's some very, very old Filipino Canadian families. They're Canadian families of Filipino descent. And for the newcomers, it would be nice to see people of, I guess, of similar culture, and plying the roads at the parade, because then they'll feel like, oh, I'm not the only one, or I don't feel isolated. Yes.
Yeah. So it's like they can come here and they feel welcomed almost.
Correct. But I'd like to that hasn't happened. Like what I'm getting at is we make an effort to do that. I mean, the Northeast Filipino Canadian Association, with that in mind, has been quite active. I mean, we have our art shows, we join the parades. Nobody's telling us to do this. We like to do it, so on one hand, it's for us to see each other, get to know each other, but also it's for for us to be in touch with the rest of the city. Like we have partnerships with the city. Just this month of Filipino Heritage Month, because June is also Filipino Heritage Month, we conducted Philippine language classes for school-age children, and that was partnered with the city of Fort St. John. So we try to see avenues wherein we can connect with other people. We're looking at next year, possibly for Filipino Heritage Month, maybe have something to do with cooking Filipino dishes, this kind of thing. And when we partner with the city, it's always open to the public. So anybody who's interested to learn about, say, Filipino food and cooking, or like in this year's case, language, then we have those opportunities to connect. And that's what we're looking for. We'd like to connect because we're here, and we're proud and happy to be here, and we'd like to contribute to the growth of Fort St. John.
Great. Thank you so much, Ovvian. And thank you so much for taking the time to join me today here on the show. And we look forward to seeing the float in the parade tomorrow.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks for having me, Jordan.
Of course. So that is local artist and filmmaker Ovvian Castrillo-Hill. Be sure to keep your eyes out locally for her work coming up in the future. We'll be right back to wrap up the show after this.
Moose FM is out and about, supporting your favorite local business.
Summer is here, and it's a time to get those house projects done. It's better when you save money. I'm Bernard from the afternoon show at Windsor Plywood on Tolton Road in FSJ for their customer appreciation sale. They want to thank you for supporting them throughout the many years. So 20% off lumber, stains, doors, and pretty much everything in store. So if you have a deck that's falling apart, your partner has been bugging you for a while about it, it's your time to fix it and save money. The barbecue is going to be on for lunchtime, so grab some food and save 20% on everything in store today at Windsor Plywood on Tolton Road.
You don't have to up, down, left, right, BA your way to a ticket to Grand Con, the comic and pop culture event of the year. Get your tickets now for Grand Con, July 14th to 16th.
It's gonna be an epic year with actors, actresses, artists, and so much more!
Tickets at grandcon.ca, presented by Stringham Law in support of Odyssey House. Have you ever wondered about the story behind why Monument in Fort St. John was built, or who started the first hockey tournament in northern BC? Check out Voices of the Peace, a podcast from edgeXcity.ca that answers these questions and more. Host Ted Sloan sits down with the people who make this city and region a great place to live.
He's helped bring the world's attention to a simply wonderful pocket of BC through his work with the Tumbler Ridge Museum and the Tumbler Ridge Global Geopark. My next guest is Dr. Charles Helm.
Go to edgeXcity.ca/voices to find out more.
Need help making it to all of the Canada Day festivities here in Fort St. John? Let us help. You can watch the Fort St. John Co-op's Canada Day Parade a live stream and still feel like you're there. Watch the live stream on the Moose FM and energeticcity.ca Facebook pages starting at 11 a.m. The Fort St. John Co-op presents the Canada Day live stream.
Moose Country weather.
Today, a high of 22 degrees, mainly sunny skies. There is a special air quality statement in effect right now for some local smoke. Later tonight, 13 degrees, and tomorrow, high of 18 with a chance of showers, a risk of thunderstorm, and that local smoke again. Sunday, we're going to see a high of 19 with a mix of sun and clouds.
Join us next Friday at 10 a.m. for another episode of Moose Talks, a weekly talk show about Fort St. John and the North Peace.
Thanks to our guests Jamey Blair and Ovvian Castrillo-Hill for joining us today. It's getting harder to find your news through Google and Facebook, so I encourage you to spend more time at energeticcity.ca and sign up for the newsletter. They're free and delivered straight to your inbox with all of the local and regional news to get you started for your day. You can also sign up for a Peace Politics newsletter covering the doings of local governments in the peace, and sign up for our new summer events newsletter, keeping you up to date on events happening in the region and giving you ideas of how to spend your time in the great outdoors. Sign up today at energeticcity.ca/newsletters. That's our show for today. Trey Lopashinsky and Adam Rayburn are the producers of today's show. I'm Jordan Prentice. Enjoy the long weekend, and we'll see you next Friday.
Join us next Friday at 10 a.m. for another episode of Moose Talks, a weekly talk show about Fort St. John and the North Peace.